Hi everybody, I'm Mike Gazier and this is my April 2006 video commentary. And I promised you last month I was going to try to bring you these video commentaries from more interesting locales. Now I don't want to give this one away. Some of you might recognize what city I'm in, but I don't want to ruin it for those who don't. Now my decision for this month was to sort of go backward. What I want to talk to you about this month is derivatives again, but more specifically I want to talk to you about the most simple type of swap that you would ever encounter, which is an interest rate swap. Interest rate swaps are more common than all other kinds of swaps put together, but that's changing. Other kinds of swaps are becoming more popular. We'll talk about that next month. But the basic premise of an interest rate swap, which has been around over 20 years now, when I explain this to people in my classes, the way I explain it to them is simply this. I tell them I'm going to separate my seminar group into two different groups. I'm going to give them each $100 million to invest. One of the groups takes their $100 million, buys all fixed rate bonds. The other group takes their $100 million, buys all floating rate bonds. What I immediately will ask them is, do both groups have interest rate risk? And the answer is yes, they do. The fixed group is worried about rates rising, because if rates rise, their fixed rate bonds values will fall. The floating group is worried about just the opposite. They're worried about their bonds falling in value if rates fall with them, because if you're getting a floating rate, if rates drop, your coupons will drop. So both groups have risk, it's just totally different risks. What I might suggest to them, though, is simply this idea. Each of them takes 50 million of their respective bonds aside, and we have an agreement. The fixed rate people pay their fixed coupons to the floating rate people. So $50 million worth of fixed rate coupons to the floating rate people. And in return, the floating people pay the floating coupons and 50 million of their bonds to the fixed rate people. Now, in real life, the truth is they're still 100% fixed and 100% floating. But with this interest rate swap that I'm suggesting, they've really diversified into 50% fixed and 50% floating. That's where I start this, because I think people want to have real tangible securities involved. But the thing is, and some of you know it, with derivatives, you don't always have that. So my suggestion is, couldn't we do the same exact thing on $50 million, and here comes the word, notional value? And what I always tell my audience is, when you hear that word notional, the word I always want you to remember is fictional. $50 million of fictitious bonds. We just have an agreement. I'll pay you, let's say 4.5% fixed on $50 million worth of par if you'll pay me 6-month LIBOR on $50 million worth of par. It's a simple agreement. Now, why would anybody do that? And I want to give you a very simple, straightforward reason why. Let's just pretend for this example that I'm a U.S. life insurance company. Those of you that work for U.S. life insurance companies, or by and large around the world, you'll notice they prefer fixed rates. They view their liabilities as fixed, and they like fixed rate assets to match with that. But let's say a broker were to call me with a floating rate bond. Good one. Decent rating, decent company, I like it. Except that it pays 6-month LIBOR plus 250 basis points. So 6-month LIBOR plus 2.5%. I like everything about the bond but the floating rate. But before I say no, I pick up the phone and call a broker, a bank, and I want to do an interest rate swap. The bond has a life of 5 years, so I want to do a 5-year swap. I want the notional value on the swap to match the real life par value on the bond. But here's my offer. I'll pay 6-month LIBOR semi-annually for the 5 years. What kind of a fixed rate would the broker pay me back? And let's say they offer me 4.5%. So I say, okay, that sounds good, I'll do it. So on a semi-annual basis, as this bond pays me the 6-month LIBOR plus the 250 basis points, I take the LIBOR part and I pay that right out to the broker. But in return, the broker pays me 4.5% fixed. So if you net that out, the LIBORs simply cancel each other. But what I'm getting is 4.5% and 2.5%. 7%. What I did there is I used an interest rate swap to, I don't like the word here, convert that floating rate bond to a 7% fixed rate. That is the beauty of interest rate swaps, is I can use them to convert, like I just did, floating rates to fixed, fixed rates to floating. It's a tremendous tool for investors, for lenders, for many people. And if you understood that simple premise, swapping fixed rates for floating, you're going to understand the upcoming topics. Now, next month, I want to take you to an interesting, place as well. But we're going to talk about what is the fastest growing segment in this market, which I had a client introduce me to almost 15 years ago, credit default swaps. So I hope you've all been well and safe. I'm kind of digging where I am, as you could imagine. I have to go get a glass of wine immediately, but I hope you're well. I'll see you guys here next month. Tune in. It's going to be cool too. I'll see you later.